Howdy, it's Kyle talking about pedestrian bridges, and these are exactly how they sound. Bridges designed for pedestrians and other non-motorized traffic, and here I want to talk about some of the best ones in the country. Where I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I believe is home to the best one of these that I'll be talking about. It's just a really important part of the downtown. It's quite the focal point, a centerpiece of the city. And if you are familiar with Chattanooga, you know just how important that walking bridge is to the entire downtown. And to paraphrase the dude, it kind of ties the town together. And here I want to talk about just what makes that bridge so special, but also some of the other ones like that in the country. Some other cities that have a walking bridge, although maybe not quite as good as the one we have here, but also talk about some cities that could really benefit to have one of these, because I think a walking bridge like this can really be an important part of the downtown, because it can really be a destination, not just something that connects two different parts of town. So let's talk about some of the best walking bridges in the country. I'm going to first start talking about the bridge here in Chattanooga. It's called the Walnut Street Pedestrian Bridge, and there are three things about it that make the one here a little bit better than some of the other ones. One, it was designed as a bridge for vehicles. It was condemned for vehicle traffic in 1978, but made pedestrian only in 1990. So because it was formerly for vehicles, it is a little bit wider, and you can do more stuff on it because it just is a little bit wider than some of the ones that have been built later on specifically as only a pedestrian bridge. It really isn't that wide. The second thing that Chattanooga has going for it with this bridge is that it connects the heart of the downtown, the CBD, to one of the coolest neighborhoods in the city, the North Shore. So at the south end of the bridge, you have some tourist infrastructure, some restaurants. You also have the aquarium there. On the north end of the bridge is more funky restaurants and shops. It's a little more locals oriented on the north end, and there's also an ice cream shop at either end of the bridge. So the bridge in and of itself becomes a destination for people from different parts of the city, people from the suburbs, visitors from out of town will go downtown, but just kind of walk across the bridge from one end to the other, one cool part of downtown to the next. And the third thing that gives Chattanooga an advantage with this bridge, and this might be the most important one, is that the Tennessee River, which is the river the bridge goes over, is not a state line or even a city line. It's the city of Chattanooga on both ends of the bridge. For example, right now it's under renovation, so I couldn't even get images of the bridge because it's shut down to be renovated. But because it's just the city of Chattanooga, there isn't a bunch of other stuff that has to be done. So if it were a bridge that was a state line or a city line, you'd have to coordinate with another city, another county, another state. And because it's just one jurisdiction, the city can host events on it. There's one called the Wine Over Water, which is a big wine tasting festival on the bridge. The bridge is also the beginning and ending point for an Ironman triathlon, as well as a big cycling event. And so with all these things going on, the bridge is just a very important part of downtown. Without it, you wouldn't be able to connect these two parts of town pretty easily, and neither one of them would be as vibrant as they are. So with the bridge being wide, connecting two of the most important points in the city, and wholly being contained within a city, makes the Chattanooga Walking Bridge, I think, the best one in the country. Next, I want to talk about the Purple People Bridge, which connects Cincinnati, Ohio to Newport, Kentucky, crossing over the Ohio River. This is an older bridge that was originally built for vehicles and also for a train, but it was rebuilt in 2003 for pedestrians only. And there are some huge differences between this one and the one in Chattanooga that I think makes the one in Chattanooga a little bit better. One is that the Ohio River is a state line, so anything done on this bridge has to be coordinated with two different cities, two different counties, two different states. And the second thing that makes this one a lot different than the one in Chattanooga is that it's privately owned. So as a result, it's for profit, so you can pay for it to have it shut down to have a wedding reception or some other type of party on the bridge. But one thing that this bridge has going for it is that at either end of the bridge is a pretty interesting neighborhood. It's downtown Cincinnati on one side and a new development on the Newport, Kentucky side. On the Cincinnati side is a large riverfront park. This is where both the football and baseball stadiums are, an arena, and it's pretty close to the central business district. On the Newport, Kentucky side, it's much more modern suburb-like. There's a new retail development there, but the bridge does not connect it to historic downtown Newport. On the Kentucky side, it's called Newport on the Levee. There's an aquarium, a movie theater, a video game experience. It's kind of like one of those live type developments, but a little bit better. But the reason why this development is being done right there at the Kentucky side of this bridge is because of this bridge. It's really easy to visit both downtown Cincinnati and the modern Newport stuff in one little trip by just walking across that bridge. Or perhaps you're going to a baseball or a football game, but you want to eat at a restaurant on the Kentucky side, you can walk across the bridge. And whenever I visit Cincinnati, I always park on the Kentucky side. It's cheaper and easier to find a spot to park there and then walk across the bridge to downtown Cincinnati. So I think the fact that this one is a state line and it's privately owned, it's a little more limited as what can be done on the bridge, but it is still a very important piece of infrastructure that connects really two important neighborhoods. Next, I'm going to the Missouri River and the pedestrian bridge that connects Omaha, Nebraska to Council Bluffs, Iowa. And this one is quite a bit different than the first two ones I mentioned as well. This one was built in 2008, purpose-built as a pedestrian-only bridge. So as a result, it never had cars on it, and it's pretty narrow. It's too narrow to really have events on the bridge. There are a couple of cutout viewpoints on there with a bench, but overall this isn't wide enough to do stuff on it. The other big difference between this one and the ones that I mentioned before is that the bridge does connect downtown Omaha, but on the Iowa side is mainly just a park. It's not where downtown Council Bluffs is. So you have the Lewis and Clark Riverfront Landing, the big historic park on the Omaha side, a big green riverfront park on the Iowa side, which is really nice, but it isn't really a destination. The last time I was there, I would see people that would park on the Iowa side, walk or ride a bike across the bridge, and then walk or ride their bike along the riverfront park in Omaha, and then back across the bridge to Iowa. So it is a really nice, convenient bridge. It is nice to use, but it's almost used more as a fitness type thing or just a way to conveniently connect these two cities as opposed to a place to go to specifically as a destination. But with that being said, when I've been on there, it's been pretty busy. People definitely use this bridge. But unlike the Purple People Bridge, this is a public bridge, so every time something gets done, renovated, or whatever it is, has to be coordinated between both Omaha and Council Bluffs, between both Nebraska and Iowa. So this pedestrian bridge is really nice, but doesn't quite do as much for downtown Omaha as the one we have here does for Chattanooga, but it is still very nice to have. Next, I'm going to Grand Rapids, Michigan, which has the Grand River going through it, and there are actually two different pedestrian bridges right downtown. One is called the Gillette Bridge, and the other one is simply called the Blue Bridge. Similar to Chattanooga, both of these are intra-city, so the Grand River is not a city or county line. And also, just like Chattanooga, these are former rail bridges, so both are pretty wide and they can have events on them, and they do. Now, these two bridges aren't very tall or long, but they are perfectly situated right downtown. On the opposite ends of the bridge, you have the President Ford Museum, a convention center, art museum, and ballroom. There are restaurants and bars on the east side, which is the more CBD side. The city will host art events, but you can also have private events on one of these bridges as well. In the past 15-20 years, Grand Rapids has grown into a pretty nice place to live, a very desirable place in the Midwest. Downtown is really vibrant. There's a lot of things going on, people walking around, and I do have a pretty good opinion that these two pedestrian bridges play an important role in that. These bridges aren't huge and quite the showpiece, but whenever you have a river, it is a barrier to pedestrians to get from one side to the other. So having something that is car-free is just really nice for pedestrians, really fun to use, and makes downtown a better place. So obviously I'm much more familiar with Chattanooga than Grand Rapids, but I'd love to hear from people that are from there. Let me know what you think of those bridges. The next place I'm going is Dayton, Ohio, and the Deeds Point Pedestrian Bridge, which crosses the Great Miami River. This one's pretty new. It was opened in 2021, and it's designed as part of a greater trail network through the metro. And as a result, it's designed more as a thoroughfare for non-motorized vehicles, part of a trail network, as opposed to being something that's a centerpiece of downtown and hosting events. The south end of the bridge is downtown, although not quite in the heart of the CBD. The north end of the bridge is a metro park. So it's pretty similar to the one in Omaha and Council Bluffs, Iowa, where one side is a park and it's used largely for pedestrians and bicyclists as a fitness type route or a trail. So I think certainly any pedestrian bridge is better than none, but I do think they missed a chance a little bit here because it was open again in 2021. They could have made it a little bit wider and had it more of a destination type showpiece for downtown. Dayton is a city whose downtown could really use something like that, so it'd be nice if they would have put a little more effort into it, put a little more money and time into it, and made it a little bit wider and more of a centerpiece for downtown. Obviously, whenever you're using public tax dollars, you want to be wary of what you're doing, but I do think you get pretty good return on this investment. You're going to get your money back on a few $1 million spent on this just in a couple of years of activity being brought downtown. Next, I'm going to the Arkansas River, which flows through Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the pedestrian bridge that crosses there. So a few miles south of downtown is a huge park called the Gathering Place, which is the big city park for Tulsa, but it's also pretty modern. It's a really nice park. There's wetlands, gardens, playgrounds, nature trails. It's won awards for one of the best city parks in the country. It is a really nice development. So this bridge is another phase of this project that connects this relatively new park, goes across the river to the west bank where you have more trails and park space. Unfortunately, the west side of the river is mostly oil refineries and industrial type things. And kind of like Dayton, it is great. It's nice to have a pedestrian bridge, but I think this one is a big disappointment because there were big promises and a lot of hype with this one, and ultimately I think it's a big letdown. So they promised this big thing with separate bike lanes and sitting areas, and well, they delivered. This does have separate bike lanes and a couple of benches. But leading up to it, there were all kinds of designs from architectural firms of what they wanted to do with this. And yeah, some of these designs are crazy and would have cost a lot more, but I'm pretty sure the city would have gotten this money back with so much more activity centered around this bridge. The city went all out with the gathering place. Again, a really nice park. I wish they would have went all out with this bridge as well. Now I'm going to go back to the Ohio River and the pedestrian bridge that connects Louisville, Kentucky to Jeffersonville, Indiana. So obviously this is another one where the river is a state line, so you have multiple jurisdictions having to deal with things going on with this bridge. And like the pedestrian bridge between Cincinnati and Newport, Kentucky, this one was a repurposed bridge that was originally for rail, but now it's for pedestrians only. On the Louisville side is the Big Four lawn, adventure playgrounds, and amphitheater and rowing club boathouses. And on the Indiana side, it's basically just residential, kind of a suburb. The Louisville side is technically downtown, but the bridge beginning is east of a bunch of interchange overpasses, so to walk to the bridge from the heart of the CBD, you have to go through all that freeway stuff. It's kind of a mess. And again, the Indiana side is just houses and residential, not even a big park there. So as a result, this bridge is a little more for convenience as opposed to being a centerpiece for downtown. But that would be pretty convenient if you work in the CBD of Louisville to live in one of those houses on the Indiana side of the bridge and just commute by walking across that bridge. So the Big Four bridge here is hard to call it a disappointment because it was originally a rail bridge that was repurposed, even though it isn't right in the perfect location you might want it. Now I'm going to go one state to the south to Nashville, Tennessee, which has the Cumberland River flowing through the city. Here they have the Siegenthaler Bridge right downtown. It was built in 1909 but condemned for vehicles in 1998. City leaders from Nashville visited Chattanooga and saw what the bridge did for downtown here, so they went back to Nashville and said, that's a really cool idea. We should do that in Nashville. And this one works pretty similar to the one in Chattanooga. The west end of the bridge is downtown, Broadway, all the bars, all the honky-tonks. The east side of the bridge is where you have a new development. They're building a new football stadium for the Titans. And this development that's going on the east side of the river is largely due to this bridge. The bridge plays a huge part in this development. The developers are assuming and planning on people walking across this bridge to come to this development if they're visiting downtown Nashville. But it isn't just for tourists. Kind of like Chattanooga, locals will come from different parts of the city, come from the suburbs just to come downtown, hang out on this bridge. So with this pedestrian bridge, I would say Nashville got it right, and it's a very important part of the bustling downtown. Next, I'm going to Greenville, South Carolina. Right downtown, they have the Liberty Bridge that crosses over the Reedy River at the Falls of Reedy River Park. And this is another one where it's intra-city, so both ends of the bridge are the city of Greenville, only one jurisdiction to deal with. It's also located right in the heart of the CBD. It connects the business district to an office district. But it's also a really cool looking bridge, and it's not just the form, but it's also the function. It's located right in the best part of town. It connects things that are important, and it's really convenient. And if you know Greenville, you know this bridge is a very important part of the downtown. It's a showpiece. The Falls of Reedy River Park is a really cool spot. And just like Chattanooga and Nashville, people will come downtown just to hang out at this park and walk along this bridge. Now this one isn't huge and long and tall and grand, but it is, again, very convenient because of what it connects, but it also does it in a really cool looking way. When I first saw the Liberty Bridge at this park, I didn't think it was actually functional. I thought it was just a cool piece of art that people can walk on, but no, it really is a useful bridge that connects the heart of the downtown where some of the high-rises are to some of the more office complexes and hotels on the other side of the river. So Greenville, nice city, nice downtown, nice park right there, great bridge, the Liberty Bridge. Next, I'm going to Minneapolis that has the Mississippi River flowing through it, and just like Grand Rapids, there are two pedestrian bridges crossing the river downtown. One is the University of Minnesota Bridge. This is a repurposed bridge that was used for cars that goes over the river that connects one part of the campus to another. So even though it is public use, anybody can use it. It is basically just used for students, so it isn't quite the same thing as a downtown pedestrian bridge. But the main one for downtown Minneapolis is the Stone Arch Bridge. This one was built in 1883. It was stopped for car traffic in 1978 and became a pedestrian bridge after that. And the actual name of the bridge is the Stone Arch Bridge. It's mainly used as a thoroughfare for pedestrian and cycling traffic, not so much as a hangout spot. However, it is known to have a couple of big festivals there, including the big Stone Arch Festival every Father's Day weekend. And this is a great spot to see views of downtown. There are St. Anthony Falls right there, and there are a couple of islands in the river as well. So despite a couple of big events on this bridge each year, it isn't really a weekend destination. People don't come down here and hang out here each weekend with street performers and type things, although it is great to have this nice bridge that is a pedestrian-only bridge to safely cross over the Mississippi River right downtown. Now I'm going to go down to Texas, first going to Austin that has the Colorado River flowing through it, and the pedestrian bridge there is called the Pfluger Pedestrian Bridge. This is one that was built in 2001 specifically as a pedestrian and cycling only bridge for safety concerns because crossing over the river otherwise on some of the main streets was really dangerous. Additional ramps and access points were added in 2011, again specifically for trail use as part of a large urban trail system. So Austin, being a Sunbelt city, really isn't very pedestrian friendly, but it has more of an urbanist type vibe to it. So something like this that's a pedestrian only bridge is a really nice thing to have from a thoroughfare standpoint. Okay, now keeping it in Texas, but going up to Dallas, I'm going to the Ronald Kirk pedestrian bridge that crosses over the Trinity River right downtown. This was originally a railroad bridge built in 1933. It was condemned in 2010 and it was reopened in 2014 as a pedestrian and cycling only bridge. And this is part of an overall huge riverfront park development called the Harold Simmons Park. I think there's still some details being wrinkled out what they're going to do with this park, but it is going to be this really big, beautiful urban park right downtown. And this is a bridge that is more of a destination type thing. People do come here to hang out. You have street performers on there, you have some art, you have a splash pad for kids, a playground. And I think once this whole Harold Simmons Park is redone, this bridge is going to be a huge part of it, connecting one side of downtown to another very safely. So just by itself, this Ronald Kirk Bridge is pretty cool, even without the whole big park development going on around it. But right now, this Dallas Riverfront Park is one of the biggest urban projects in the country, and I'm really looking forward to see what the final thing will look like. Next, I do want to make a quick mention of the really cool pedestrian bridge in downtown Chicago, the BP Pedestrian Bridge. Now this one is literally just meant to be a pedestrian overpass to safely go over some freeway stuff that is a bit of a mess. And as such, it does exactly that. It is a safe way to cross the street. But look at it. It didn't need to be anywhere near this cool. It could have just been a regular old overpass. Didn't need to be this piece of art. So kind of like Austin, Chicago doesn't need a big magnet of a thing for people to come and hang out. This connects to other really cool things to hang out while you're in Chicago. So now you can cross this road by walking across a really cool piece of art, the BP Pedestrian Bridge. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned how Chattanooga probably has the best one of these pedestrian bridges in the country, but if you're going to make an argument that it's not, the one you're going to argue for is this one, the one in Poughkeepsie, New York. This one's called the Walkway Over the Hudson that goes over the Hudson River. It was originally a road and rail bridge decommissioned in 1974. It was reopened in 2009 as a state park. And of all of these, this one is definitely the most grand. It's the tallest, it's just the most beautiful, the scenery, just everything about it is just really cool. And this place is a good example of why I think these pedestrian bridges can be really great for your city. Poughkeepsie is not the greatest place in the world. It's an okay kind of place. It's a little rough around the edges, but after this bridge opened, a lot of tourists came to the city to check this bridge out. You have downtown Poughkeepsie on one end of the bridge, so you have some interesting shops and things there that have seen a little more activity since this bridge opened up. Now, of course, the big difference here is that Poughkeepsie is by far the smallest city I've mentioned of all the ones that has a pedestrian bridge. But with that being the case, I can imagine there are quite a few folks from New York City or other parts of the state that have driven there just for the day, maybe gotten something to eat, maybe stayed the night there, but really put some money into the economy of Poughkeepsie simply because of this pedestrian bridge. And to be honest, I haven't been there, but now that I know about it, the next time I go up to New York, I'm going to go to this bridge. It looks really cool. Okay, so now I want to talk about a few cities that I think could really benefit by having a pedestrian bridge right in the heart of the downtown. The most hit you over the head obvious one would be Pittsburgh. They have all these bridges right downtown, beautiful ones, painted yellow. It'd be great if one of these was pedestrian only. They could use to host events, have all kinds of stuff going on there, and just be a really cool way to cross from one side of the city to another. There are so many iconic bridges in Pittsburgh, and to make one pedestrian only as a highlight of downtown would be great. The other city I want to mention that could really do with one of these pedestrian bridges is Cleveland. Cleveland has the Cuyahoga River flowing through the city that empties out into Lake Erie. And the way the river winds around through downtown, there are just so many options, so many places they could put a pedestrian bridge like this or change a road bridge into a pedestrian only one. I do want to mention that there is a bridge called the Windy Park Bridge that was built in 2021. It's part of a park system, trail system. It's really great as that, but it really is just a way to cross this kind of messy industrial area safely. But just like Pittsburgh, I do think Cleveland is perfectly set up to have a bridge right there. I do think there's been talks about it in the years past, but talk is cheap. Nothing's been done yet. So that was my look at the best pedestrian bridges in the US. And as you can tell, I'm a big fan of these. I think they can be a really important part of the downtown as they are here in Chattanooga. And there really aren't that many of these. These are almost all the ones you can talk about. There are a handful of smaller ones, but these are pretty much all of them. I think it's the kind of thing where you can't have too many of these. If every city with a river had a pedestrian bridge like this, it just would kind of take away from how special they are because, again, the one here in Chattanooga is pretty special. But if you think this video is special, please give me a thumbs up to let me know you approve and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in learning more about geography from a nerd. But yeah, thanks for watching. Geography King signing out. I want to give a special thanks to my superior patrons for their support. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description. As always, thank you very much.